everybody. Thank you for joining us this evening. We'll begin our open session with approval of tonight's agenda. Are there any additions or deletions? Hearing none, are there any disclosures of interest this evening? Okay, then hearing none, we have a delegation this evening from MPAC, and we'll turn it over to Chad Tanner. Welcome.
Thanks, Mayor Hampton. My name is Chad Tanner. I'm an account manager with the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation, and I'm here tonight to do a couple things. One is I just want to provide a generic presentation about MPAC and who we are, what we do, and sort of what our role is in the property assessment and taxation system in the province of Ontario, and how we sort of interact with municipalities and the Township of Schreiber in general. And secondly, I want to provide you with a 2020 assessment update. The assessment update itself doesn't get into market conditions. It's more of a general update. We don't have all that information as of yet.
Chad, your presentation won't go past 15 minutes. Or?
I will keep it under 15 minutes.
Thank you.
Yes. If it's okay with you guys, I'll go through the presentation. If there's questions at the end, I can just take them at that time, or and we can do it that way. Okay. So just start off, who MPAC is. MPAC is the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation. We're a not-for-profit organization with a 13-member board of directors. There's out of the 13 members, 7 are elected officials from municipalities across the province, usually mayors. 4 of them are taxpayers, are the tax industry itself, which comes from sort of more of the private sector. And then 2 of them are appointed, 2 of them come from the province of Ontario. All 13 positions are appointed through the Ministry of Finance, and they oversee sort of the operations and the governance of the Municipal Property Assessment Corporation itself. And as it says, we're about 1,700 employees across the province of Ontario, and we're located in all different pockets across. We have 7 different zones. We're considered Zone 7, which is Northern Ontario. In Northern Ontario alone, we have approximately 5 primary offices and 3 or 4 sub-offices as well, just in the north alone. So we are spread out across the province, and we do have different satellite offices that makes us available in different areas within the province. So getting down to the Ontario Property Assessment and Taxation System and how MPAC fits in. First and foremost, we have the Government of Ontario. The Government of Ontario sets legislation and policies, and they also oversee education tax rates and different policy tools that municipalities can utilize from when it comes to their integration into the system as well. From there, then you find MPAC. Our job is to assess all properties in the province of Ontario and define them within specific tax classes. And once we define those current market values, we provide what we call an assessment roll to all the municipalities across the province, all 444. Once that assessment roll is provided to municipalities, they utilize that information to determine what their tax rates are going to be within a municipality. It's all geared towards a municipal budget. Once a municipal budget is defined, they determine how much property tax dollars they need to provide the goods and services in their community, and then from there they can identify the tax rates and apply that to the actual assessed values of the properties to distribute the tax burden amongst the community. And obviously the last piece is the property owners. The property owners themselves, they will have they're the ones responsible for paying the actual taxes to the municipalities. And obviously if they have any issues with the property assessment itself, they can come directly to MPAC, or even there's a third party tribunal called the Assessment Review Board, which oversees appeals that can't be settled between property owners and MPAC. This is a tribunal that's appointed by the Ministry of Finance, and it is considered a bit of a court of law, so that it is a very judiciary process. So just to give you a snapshot of how large of the task MPAC has to perform, we have almost $3 trillion in total current value assessment of all properties across the province of Ontario. You can see we have just under 5.4 million properties across the entire province. This includes all our tax classes: residential, industrial, commercial, multi-residential. As you can see, residential accommodates almost 75% of the entire current value assessment for the entire province. So that's where there's a lot of work and attention that goes into the residential platform. Just to kind of give you a snapshot of sort of how the township of Schreiber sort of falls and the assessment based on the size of what you have. You can see here it's about 49 million in change, and you can see there's 6 different tax classes, property classes which it falls under. Residential be having the lion's share, some falling in commercial as well. So this is what you utilize to set your tax rates and collect your tax revenues to provide your goods and services in your community.
Chad, if you don't mind me asking, what would be exempt?
Things like exempt would be things like your arena, which is municipally owned. Things like your schools, these are assessed as well. So these are big ticket items. That I believe that 8.9 million down there between the arena and the schools themselves, that represents about almost 80-90% of that value. But you also have other different pockets that may be exempt, and it could fall within things if it's municipally owned.
Yep.
Those are considered exempt properties.
Thank you.
So just to try to talk about a little bit about how MPAC provides services and how we're accountable to municipalities. In 2018, we initiated a partnership with municipalities all across the province of Ontario, a service level agreement. This service level agreement outlines are the performance standards that you measure us against in regards, and there's 13 actually service level objectives within this agreement itself that we identify. And these all gear around the services, the products, and the delivery of things like the assessment role, all those things that we provide to municipalities and what we're actually geared to do and what we need to do for you guys. We measure our performance on those. So we set performance standards, things like it's down to as small as municipal inquiries. When the municipality submits an inquiry to MPAC, we track, monitor, and triage that process so we can identify how long it took us to respond. And then we sort of report this out on a monthly, quarterly, semi-annually, annually, and even a post-assessment update as well. So these are reporting mechanisms that we have in place to measure our performance and our services we provide to municipalities, and we report out on this on a frequent basis. So the municipal staff and all the municipalities, they would get reports on a general basis, and there's also remediation tasks involved as well. If we fail one of these performance standards, my job is to pick up the phone, call somebody like Nathan, have a conversation with him, and explain why we failed and sort of what we're doing to remediate that moving forward. So let's get into some of how we assess our properties. This is sort of our core business of sort of who we are and what we do. Across the province of Ontario, there's 3 approaches to valuation: direct comparison approach, income approach, and cost approach. The direct comparison approach is used for the residential market primarily. This is where we look at sales within the industry, it's within the market itself, and determine what type of influence those are having on the market conditions, and translate that into how it affects the values of a property. The income approach focuses more on properties like shopping malls, large office suites that are rent out. These are more focused on not the income of the actual business that's being run within the property itself. It's what the income can be generated by leasing or renting the property. So we have various different mechanisms where we send out property information and expense reports to get information back from the property owners themselves, to share lease agreements and those type of sort of confidential information that we use to generate the value for these types of properties. Again, these usually fall within the area of things like shopping malls, industrial malls, large office, and like dental offices, things like that have multiple tenants. The tenants don't actually own the building, they're just leasing or renting. The cost approach, this approach is, again, focused, this one in particular doesn't involve sales, because these types of properties don't really turn over that often in the market. So we're talking some of these large industrial properties. Things like, things like Terrace Bay with Adida Berta, or even in Thunder Bay, you talk about Resolute Forest products, Bombardier. These ones don't transact in the market very often. So we have to take a different approach because we can't take sales into considerations. So what we do in this area, we look at what it would cost to reproduce the facility on a certain point in time. So every 4-year cycle, we have an evaluation date, and at that time, we'll go and say, for example, like Adida Berla, we would look at it and say, well, what is it going to cost to build that facility as of January 1st, 2019? And so we would go through that process. We look at all the structures, the land, and incorporate that piece in. And then from there, we would apply some depreciation components to it, whether it be functional obsolescence and or economic obsolescence, which looks at the market and see different market conditions that are affecting the actual property itself and its operation. And even functional, sometimes if a plant was built back in the 70s and 80s, if you build the same plant now from a functionality perspective, the footprints probably doesn't need to be as big. So the actual facility may not be actually fully utilized. So we will incorporate some depreciation from there. Then once we've sort of taken that consideration, that's when we would add the land values and sort of, and then roll that up, and that's how we would dictate sort of the cost approach and how we determine the values for those types of properties. So valuing residential properties, this one I wanted to provide a little more detail on because obviously this is, once again, as I said before, it's about 75% of the overall province, and most municipalities, it represents a good chunk of their assessment base. So when we start looking at, again, this uses a direct comparison approach. So we look at sales, we take that information to define the market condition and what's happening within individual communities and sort of how sales are performing and people are actually, whether if it's going up or going down within the community itself. There's 5 primary factors that go into the consideration of the value of a property, residential property: location, lot dimensions, the exterior square footage, the quality of construction, and the age of the building itself. These 5 factors typically represent about 85% of the value of a residential property. So between these physical components and the sales market conditions and what we're doing there, we bring those two together and they integrate into the value of the property. And I want to point one thing out, the middle icon here where it says the exterior square footage, a lot of people think we measure the inside of the house. We don't measure the inside of the house, we measure the exterior, and that's because that's the entire footprint of the property itself. So just a quick one that people always sort of question. So now let me sort of kind of give you a bit of a high level overview of sort of who we are, what we do, and some of the primary approaches to assessing value. Let's look at some of the pieces for the 2020 assessment update. As I said, we've been working in the 2020 assessment update for some time now. We're waist deep in it, and we are getting close to start releasing some values. This will start happening sort of early summer, and we'll talk about that a little later. But before we get into that, I just wanted to kind of paint a picture to say, whenever we do a province-wide reassessment, it's on a 4-year cycle. So every 4 years, we reassess all properties across the province of Ontario. You can see in 2016 was the last assessment update, 2020 is the current assessment update. The one key point I want to point out here is you'll see the 2016 assessment update. It's for the tax years of 2017 through 2020. And then the valuation date, which is a legislative date, is January 1st, 2016, which aligns with the actual date of the assessment update. In 2020, you'll notice, again, the tax years will be 2021 through 2024, the 4 years afterwards. However, the valuation date is January 1st, 2019. It doesn't align with the actual 2020 itself. That date has changed as it allows us to prepare and give us more time to actually do our market assessment and collect more sales data to make sure our information is as current and as accurate as possible.
So what should it say then if January 1/19 is not in effect anymore?
Oh, sorry, January 1st, 2019 will be the current legislative current market valuation date for this assessment update.
For the next one?
For the next one. So when you receive your property assessment notice, in June, which I'll talk about a little bit later, it'll say this was the value of your property as of January 1st, 2019.
So it's a year back already.
It's a year delay, but there's a couple reasons for that. One is, first and foremost, we usually collect sales market data for the 3 to 4 years prior, and we utilize that as to determine the values and integrate in and moving forward. So any values, so we're allowed to collect sales data right up to January 1st, 2019. So once we did that, then we also gave ourselves an extra year to look at those values and sort of fine tune and polish them even further.
Well, unfortunately, sales from last year up till recently are not effective for the next 4 years.
Correct. It will catch up when the 2024 one comes, January 1st, 2023. So basically from January 1st, 2019 to all the way to January 1st, 2023, that'll be the next 4-year cycle, and the market and that information will be captive for that time frame. Yes. So as you can see, and just this speaks to what you were just suggesting, the valuation date to be January 1st, 2019. We will release the property assessment notices between May and October of this year. And then those values will be applicable for 2021 through 2024. And it'll be phased in over a period of time if there's increases. So this just gives you an example of sort of how the phase-in works just in general. I should say before we get started with this one, if a value decreases, the decrease is not phased in. It automatically goes to the decrease, and that's the value it is for that time frame for the rest of the tax years. But in this case, as you can see at the top, it'll say January 1st, 2019, the value is $350,000. As of January 1st, 2016, it was $325,000. So you see there's an increase of $25,000. The phase-in legislation that was imposed basically increases this assessed value over the 4-year cycle. So they'll take the $25,000 increase, they'll divide it by 4, and they'll just add that amount each year consecutively till it gets to that destination value of $350,000. So I guess a couple things here, how we're supporting municipalities. So I guess first and foremost, about 6 to 9 months ago, we started sort of a process of sort of consulting with some municipalities, and it started at the AMO conference back in, I believe it was August of 2019. MPAC started running focus groups and started getting feedback in regards to the 2016 CBA and asking municipality what worked and what actually did you guys like, what did you guys like from that process. So we started getting feedback, things like, we like how proactive MPAC was in the past, sharing information earlier and making sure that we're informed and coming out and being and building those relationships and being engaged, not only with municipalities but also with property owners to move those yardsticks forward, so we're able to ensure that we're being transparent and our process is traceable. So specifically how we're looking to support you from your constituents' perspective, we have sort of 3 specific tools. One, obviously we have MPAC.ca. MPAC.ca has a wealth of information about who we are, what we do, and how we assess properties. In addition to that, we have About My Property. About My Property is specifically for property owners. Anybody who owns a property will receive a unique identification code where they can log in and actually see their property and all the information on their property, what we have on file. They can also look at their community and look at what comparable properties are in their community. They can look at the sales, all the information that we have that's went into actually driving those values. And then obviously we have our customer call center that we have at MPAC as well, that property owners are able to engage with. From your community perspective, this is more in regards to what we're doing for municipalities. We have, over the next month or so, we'll be releasing communication toolkits for municipalities so they can utilize from an education and awareness perspective. They can put on their newsletters, on their websites, and even educate them and their staff as well. We have, FAQs for frontline staff as well, which we've developed, which will be shared out through the media toolkits. We also have council presentations, just sort of like this one, that would come out and share information and provide assessment updates and what's going on. And then, you know, moving forward, we're also going to have, I'll be back probably in May in regards to asking for another delegation to provide more market conditions. These are these provincially, sort of regional and local market conditions and what's sort of happening with your assessment base and the values itself. So just to kind of give you a bit of a timeline on what's happening, for the District of Thunder Bay, and I believe it's Kenora Rainy River as well, so this in like the Northwest region, June 8th will be the issue date for property assessment notices. And I should say these are residential property assessment notices. All the business property, conservation land, and so on, they will come in the fall. But the fact that residential properties represent about 75% of our assessment bases, this is where we focus our attention to get this information out. And you can see on the far right-hand side, we have the request for reconsideration deadlines as well. We change them for the first year of a new cycle because we give people, as they get the notices, we give them 120 days to submit a request for reconsideration. And then we try to get them fixed before the assessment roll for the municipalities go out in December. And as you guys know, the request for reconsideration process is an annual process, so you're able to apply on an annual basis if you feel it's necessary. I spoke with this one a little bit. This is about my property. I won't spend a lot of time on this. This is the tool that kind of what it looks like when you log in, and it shows all the information for a specific property owner. And it's a pretty intuitive tool. We've revamped it. We've made it more user friendly and more intuitive for people to navigate and get information from it. And this is the area where also we steer property owners to submit their requests for reconsiderations, because it allows us to streamline and make that process more efficient. Speaking of resolving sort of assessment concerns and that request for reconsideration process, you know, once those assessments come out, first and foremost, I think the first question you should ask yourself, you know, could I have sold my property for the assessed value on January 1st, 2019? And if the answer is, okay, MPAC has it at 72,000, the value, and the answer is, yeah, I could have sold it for that, then we probably got the value right. If they feel that it's sometimes even underassessed or overassessed, they could say, well, this is where we're saying step 2, visit about my property. Go and review the information MPAC has on file about your property and actually verifying if it's correct, and even doing some comparisons. And in step 3, when you start talking about looking at similar properties in your neighborhood and start looking at them and saying, what are they going for? This one's similar to mine. And that'll give you a good indication of sort of where things are landing if it's equitable across the municipality itself. And then on number 4, if you still disagree with their assessment itself, you can file a request for reconsideration, which can be done through the portal itself.
How does MPAC become aware of if someone buys property in this community? What value is involved in that transaction?
Good question. We receive, there's a provincial group called Terranet. Terranet is a government-driven sort of entity that monitors all sales and collects all sales data across the province of Ontario. And they get affidavits which specifically delineate chatels, different parcels that come with an actual sale itself. So on all that information, MPAC gets provided that. So we collect it, and we actually provide a bi-weekly municipal sales listing to all municipalities so they can monitor sales that are going on as well. So when we receive that information, we look at the sale and we'll say, okay, this property was bought, and we'll say, okay, if it was bought for $100,000, doesn't necessarily mean that's the value we're going to take in consideration, because maybe there was a boat or there was different pieces of the property that came with it, which are not spoken to the actual true value of the home. Those are additions. So we would remove those pieces and focus on that aspect of it. So, and the last two pieces I showed you were more focused on property owners. Municipal Connect, this is the primary tool that MPAC provides to municipalities, that to you guys to undertake your analysis of your assessment base, track, monitor what's going on. It's a very robust tool And there's a lot of information that municipalities can pull from this from an analytics perspective, and to monitor and engage with MPAC to oversee sort of their assessment piece and making sure they're engaged with sort of its maintenance as we move forward. So this just kind of gives you a bit of a snapshot, just talks about the local offices in Zone 7. You can see Zone 7 is Northern Ontario, it's quite large. And but we have, you can see there's 5 primary offices: Thunder Bay, Sudbury, North Bay, Timmins, Sault Ste. Marie, and then we also have sub-offices in Kenora, Dryden, and Fort Francis. And at the top, you can see our regional manager, Mary Dawson Cole. She's located in Sudbury. It's her contact information. Then I'm the local account manager located in Thunder Bay for the District of Thunder Bay, which would be your primary contact. And I think the last piece I just want to share is, if you ever wanted to connect with us, you know, I've shared lots of different ways, but we do have a Twitter account, we have a LinkedIn account, we provide YouTube video, there's an MPAC on YouTube itself, mpac.ca. We have various different ways that we communicate with property owners, municipalities, and our other stakeholders just in general. But in addition to this, we also, throughout the assessment update, we're providing monthly webinars across the province to municipalities. And this is just ongoing information updates, what's changing with the assessment and things that we're actually engaged in. And it's key information that's relevant to you guys as well. And I know Nathan receives this information, so if you guys ever wanted to be involved or sort of participate, we do keep a library of all of the past ones as well, so you can view them if you'd like as well. So I think at this time, that's sort of where I wanted to share today, and what I wanted to provide is a general overview. As I suggested, I'm probably looking to come back in May sometime for another delegation to get into more of the specifics of some of the market conditions and what's changing with the values in the Township of Schreiber.
I just got the one question. You say you assess it, if somebody sells their house in the neighborhood or something like that, you take that into consideration, and that's thrown into how you assess the
Correct.
area.
Yes.
Okay. How about failed sales? How about Doug, my neighbor, had his place up for sale and he was asking what you guys assessed it at, but wasn't getting any bites because everybody knows it's assessed too high.
Okay.
So do you guys take, and it does happen, like I can tell you up at Walker's Lake, there's about 4 or 5 places that people put up for sale and they can't sell them because it's assessed too high.
Yeah.
So do you just take that into consideration too?
Oh, absolutely.
How would you know about failed sales?
So what we do is, as I said, we get all sales across the province of Ontario. They come to us, whether if it's a bank foreclosure, whether if it's a family sale for $2, it doesn't matter, whether if it's a regular market transaction sale, or even those ones where we monitor, we also know what they're listed for as well, and we can see what they actually sold for, and we do those comparisons. So what happens is, say for example, you're talking about Township of Schreiber, and say in the last year or so, you talk about everyone's posting, we have it assessed at, say, this value, yet when they're posting it, they're always getting under asking for what they're doing. What'll happen is, those sales will come into play when we do those future assessments and we start looking at that, because that's the actual market condition, that's what's happening in the community. Albeit, I will say, if somebody's selling a property and they're doing, say a fire sale and they just want to get rid of it and move on, we do have filters within the market itself to remove the extreme high ones and the extreme low ones. So it allows us to focus on more of the statistical variance of sort of what the mean is for the overall market itself. So we do have filters on the top and low end to standardize sort of what the norm is from a sales projection. So yes, we do take into consideration those pieces.
So you know all the sale, or not sales, I guess, that happened within, not even Walker's Lake, that happened within the Township of Schreiber. People went out and tried to sell their place that was assessed with you guys at that assessed price. Even if they wanted to, they went out and they sold it on their own. They didn't go through a company.
Even private sales.
You would know that?
Private sales we get, yes.
You would know that?
Yeah, all private sales still have to be documented because there has to be an exchange of title and deed to the new owner.
But say it didn't sell. That's my question.
Well, if it didn't sell, then there's nothing to record from a market condition.
Sure there is, because they can't sell it because it's assessed too high.
Yeah, unfortunately, we base our information on market evidence. So market evidence is actual sales.
But,
what if
but
there
it is,
is no
but it
market?
is market evidence if you guys are tracking it. You should be tracking it.
Okay, I'll have to take that back because, from my understanding, we don't. Again, it's not sold. We won't record that particular piece into the integration itself.
So in that case, if there's a lack of a market, where do your numbers come from?
Well, what we do is we start with the community itself. We identify homogeneous neighborhoods. Like I think in here in Schreiber, there's not too many because it's not very large. So what happened is we'll start with the community itself, and we'll say, okay, we'll see what sales took place in the community. And from my understanding, there was a number of sales that took place in the last 3 to 4 years in this area, mostly localized in the town. I think there was one or two, maybe. I don't know. I don't know if there's any on Walker's Lake, but. What it'll do is, if there's no sales there, we will expand the market. We may look over at Terrace Bay and see what's happening there and to see if there's any sales and what that means and how it translates into close proximity to the areas as well. So we sort of take that into consideration.
Okay, thank you very much, Chad, for your information.
Okay. All right. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks.
Okay, so we will move on with our meeting with resolution number 74-20, moved by Councillor Staffier, seconded by Councillor Morrow, with the minutes of the council and committee of the whole meeting held February 25th, 2020 be accepted as circulated. All those in favor? Resolution number 75-20, moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor McGrath, that the council of the Township of Schreiber authorize the payment of $29,198.10 towards the $100,000 in funding to the town of Marathon in contribution towards the LNG project based on the evidence provided to satisfy the conditions of Resolution 82-18. All those in favor? Resolution number 76-20, moved by Councillor Staffier, seconded by Councillor Morrow, that council receive the council expense and remuneration report for the year ended December 31, 2019. All those in favor? Carried. Thank you. Resolution number 77-20, moved by Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Morrow, that council transfer to the library donations and fundraising reserve $2,695, which represents surplus revenues in 2019. All those in favor? Resolution number 78-20, moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor Staffier, that council transfer to the library donations and fundraising reserve $3,000, which represent unspent budgeted funds for part-time wages in 2019 to be used to fund future NOHFC intern applications. All those in favor? Resolution number 79-20, moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor McGrath, that council transfer to the cemetery reserve $1,105, which represents 50% of the columbarium sales for 2019. All those in favor? Resolution 80-20, moved by Councillor Morrow, seconded by Councillor Mullins, that council transfer to the fire truck reserve $10,000 as budgeted in bylaw 21-2019. All those in favor? Resolution number 81-20, moved by Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Stafuric, that council transfer to the fire equipment reserve $1,000 as budgeted in bylaw 21-2019. All those in favor? Resolution number 82-20, moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor Morrow, that council transfer to the infrastructure reserve $629,651 as budgeted in bylaw 21-2019. All those in favor? Resolution number 83-20, moved by Councillor Stafuric, seconded by Councillor McGrath, that checks issued on the general bank account in the month of February 2020 in the amount of $326,582.77 for general accounts payable be approved and ratified. All those in favor? Resolution number 84-20, moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor Morrow, that bank debits issued on the general bank account in the month of February 2020 in the amount of $50,263.12 for payroll be approved and ratified. All in favor? Resolution number 85-20, moved by Councillor McGrath, seconded by Councillor Mullins, that council approve the purchase of a floral arrangement for the Voy in the amount of $56.50, including applicable taxes. All in favor? Resolution number 68-20, moved by Councillor Stafuric, seconded by Councillor McGrath, that bylaw 14-2020, being a bylaw under the provisions of section 34 of the Planning Act, RSO 1990, to amend zoning bylaw number 20-2014 as amended of the Corporation of the Township of Schreiber with respect to Canada Bill C-45, an act respecting cannabis, be given first, second, third, and final reading and enacted. All those in favor? Okay. Okay. That brings to a close the council portion. We'll go into the committee of the whole with our department reports. CAO clerk report up first.
So this report again was just a declaration that the council of the Township of Schreiber declared the property identified as roll number 5851000001 17600 as a surplus asset. In terms of this building, it's no longer really of any use to staff, and any storage that is currently on there will be moved to the old hydro garage. And in terms of other details, it is currently leased to a tenant, but for the purposes of this report right now, we just need to declare it as surplus, and any further kind of investigation into the property and all of that is something we can do in a closed session in terms of deciding the next steps beyond declaring it surplus.
Which property are we talking about here?
That's the old town garage.
Old Town Garage? Okay.
Across from the curling club.
Yep.
So I just have a question. Once we declare it as a surplus asset, then is there any input from the rest of the community, or is it just council making a decision on it?
It's just again council making a decision in terms of what you want to do with a property, and as such, it's just again part of the process. If you do want to, for instance, look at selling a property, it would have to be declared surplus first. So it's just part and parcel of the process for a potential sale of that property.
Okay, well, I'll just explain what I'm thinking is, if it was, for some reason, it could be multi-purpose, or repurposed, sorry. And one of the things, being on the seniors committee, one of the things that came up was, do we have extra space in our community to maybe run programs for the community, like woodworking or welding or an auto shop, stuff like that. And I was charged with trying to find some space in the community, and at the time there was none. So that's the information I brought back to the committee. But when you have a building like this, there may be an opportunity. There may be, not saying that there is, but there may be an opportunity. At least it's something that could be looked at, and then you're going to get more input from the community that way. So
Yeah, I mean
that's where I'm coming
certainly
from.
the case. It's certainly the case, right? And we have again a significant amount of real estate. It's again matching the space best with again the purposes of what we want for the program. If we do want to keep the property, and that's certainly something that council can decide
Right.
for using it for the space. Just have to keep in mind that again there are costs associated with again the building maintenance, heating,
Absolutely.
and everything. So
I think, Dan, you're likely talking about on a seasonal basis, because you wouldn't
Right.
want to be heating the job.
Right.
Right.
Right, so there's ways of getting around the huge expenses. So would it be worthwhile to defer the decision on deeming it a surplus and try to get some input from our committees?
right now we are we've got what do you say in terms of a lot of interest in this property for businesses to potentially locate into the community, and that was again part of the process of why we were declaring it surplus. But for with regards to the particulars, again, it's matters that we'd have to, from this stage on, carry it into a closed session. But for right now, it's just again a declaration of surplus. But we can talk about the various uses and the future for that building, certainly in that closed meeting.
Right, so if it was a recommendation from a committee to use the building for something other than selling it for a business?
Yeah, that's certainly
Is
something
that
that
something
committees
that,
can recommend, yeah.
Something that still could be done? That's the question.
Yeah, I don't think that's
Yeah.
declaring a surplus affects that.
No, it doesn't.
Okay, well, that's my question.
Yeah. This just prepares it for the next stage if we wanted to sell the property.
Okay.
Right.
And the big thing is, if.
Yeah.
You don't
Okay.
have to.
So is everybody fine with that then?
Yep.
Yeah.
Okay. Schreiber Discovery Center report, updated schedule.
As you can see with the schedule right now, it's scheduled for completion towards the end of May and demobilization in early June. So the project is again gearing really close to completion. Just a major component which they need to work on is that metal roofing, and it's just the weather hasn't been cooperative for that. So that's partly again why May is going to be a really busy month for the remainder of this project. But yeah, it should be coming to a close fairly soon.
So they're working inside right now.
Yep, I've not seen the interior work now. It's been some time that I've seen it in there, but again, the operations and everything in the building did kind of gear down in the winter months. But yeah, they'll be finishing all the interior finishes and everything too. Yeah.
Okay, next up, the revitalization project report.
In terms of what we have here, just a few updated drawings from our consultant. This is again TBT Engineering. When we entered into that agreement for an engineer to look at the preliminary drawings that were done by the landscape architect and to make sure that everything is again compliant to building code. And this is the feedback that they brought back with regards to this concept. So I'll just go over some changes. Again, they're saying some preliminary changes included addressing privacy issues with regards to the washroom, adjusting the exit in the corridor between the washrooms and concession rooms, and reducing the size for the universal washroom to fit the concession room requirements, and updating the utility room to set up a wall sink for any plumbing. With regards to the building itself, they have now put in a scissor truss, again just to open up the space in the gathering area. And just regards with the scissor truss, instead of it just being flat, right, you have a bit of an arch when you enter into that gathering space. In terms of doorways, the feedback they provided again was to remove the glass garage doors and instead go with just glass patio doors. And the reason that they went with this decision again was just to better allow for insulation in the building. Another component, the fireplace. This was again a two-way fireplace. They again suggested to just make it the fireplace on the inside. Just having a two-way was a interesting idea, but in terms of a practical sense, again, it was an issue of insulation, and it was also an issue that it kind of was a bit of a security concern. That being said, if anyone
Possible
wants
vandalism.
to smack the glass in there, right, it could potentially cause a fire. So that was brought up for a change. In terms of the exterior, I'm working with them right now to again figure out what kind of exterior finishes we're going to be going with. In terms of the gathering space, again, it's going to be something again fairly simple, easy to maintain. So it's going to be a concrete slab with stained. They're going to stain the concrete a certain color. With regards to finishes, they are talking about metal cladding. But I'm hoping to get some pictures and all just to make sure that it's something that's aesthetically pleasing. Again, this is going in the middle of our downtown, so I certainly don't want too much of an industrial or barnyard kind of look to this. So still working on that. Are there any questions with regards to the drawings and everything here? You know, it was a bit of a change from the last update that we had.
When do you think this is ready, to go out
Tender?
for tender?
This is aimed for that tender deadline in around May. So in the beginning of May, they'll be putting it out to tender about mid-May. We're hoping to receive the bids and award construction towards the end of May. So
Towards the end of May.
So we can use this construction season.
exactly, we really want to use this construction season, and you know, again, it's we're just hoping we don't run into any delays, and there's a various number of consultants that are, you know, working on this, again, from the structural engineer to the landscape architect to architect.
Right.
So all these various groups essentially are coordinating and working together to produce, again, what you're seeing. So they're all putting their input into, again, the best suggestions for a building that lasts for the long term and really doesn't cause any issues for us.
So there will be contractors available to jump on this?
Like general contractor?
Yeah,
Yes, there are some that have already
they expressed interest.
expressed interest, because we did at the time put it up to tender, right? And
Right.
the whole issue, in case you may not know, the whole issue with regard to it when we originally put it out for tender was the scope wasn't full to allow the general contractors to essentially deliver a bid on the project, at least to a fixed price contract. We're missing that word, fixed price contract. They could do time and material and all of that, but for our perspective, it becomes very difficult because moment decisions are made on the fly, and you know, they're changing materials and anything like that. We just wouldn't know, again, what the final budget is, and we have a very definite budget for this project, so I need to make sure 100% we can do a fixed price contract for this project.
So, in terms of the downtown, is the park still a part of the revival? That's still
Yes.
Is that?
Yep.
I know it's not have to do with this, but that's gonna happen this summer.
Yeah,
Ish.
that's the whole idea, is to tender out the whole
Whole
thing,
thing?
including
Okay.
the park and everything. It was just specifically the pavilion where
Okay.
we needed a bit more engineering
Yeah.
work and
Oh, that
everything
makes sense.
associated with it.
I'm wondering too, Nathan, when you talked about making changes to the entrance to the doors, and I remember seeing pictures, these large kind of garage-sized glass doors, which would really help to give the building a kind of a pavilion appearance. But if you're gonna bring it down to a couple of regular glass doors, then you lose that. But I guess you gotta do what you gotta do. But it's quite a change.
I mean, I agree with that, but I mean, once we get the pricing for this, I think we're gonna be going back to the drawing board, to be honest with you, so.
Yeah,
But
maybe so.
Certainly.
we'll have to wait for that time.
Okay, any other questions on that? Then we'll go next to the beautification of the downtown lots and the Grow for Good grant.
In terms of the recommendation here is that the council of the Township of Schreiber endorse this application for the 2020 Grow for Good grant to receive $2,500 in funding from the beautification of 303 Scotia Street and 322 Scotia Street. In terms of just something to keep in mind, there's also in terms of us looking into our budget meetings, you know, we want to look at budgeting around $2,500 in case we aren't successful in the grant, plus whatever township expenses would be needed for finalizing this project. So the Community Economic Development Coordinator would be working with the beautification committee to develop a project plan, at least to see what, you know, components are, again, essential for the project, and what else, you know, would be nice to have in terms of getting a full scope, again, what costs may be necessary to budget.
You're talking about a couple of properties that I think I know where they are, beside the bank and between Filane's and Spadoni's store. So, you know, right now it's just kind of a gravel properties, right? But I'm assuming you're talking sodding and whatever else, you know?
Yeah.
But then things will have to work a little differently. If you look at what goes on right there now, pushing snow in the wintertime with the big loader, like, there won't be any sod left if you
Well,
keep,
he won't be allowed to put snow in there anymore.
like, yeah, something, yeah, right.
He'll find somewhere else. that's
Just
all.
have to let it pile up. I mean, otherwise you just tear it all up. You know, like.
Alrighty, so we're all in
Yes.
agreement to go ahead with that grant?
Yep.
Absolutely.
Recreations and Festivals Committee appointment. It has been recommended that we approve Melanie McKenna as a member of the Rec and Festivals Committee. She has past experience in other committees, and I think it would be a very good addition. All those in favor?
Definitely.
Very good. Welcome now. Bylaw enforcement report, any questions on that? Pretty straightforward. And then the annual drinking water report for Schreiber drinking water system. Any questions on that? Okay, then next up is question period. Do we have any questions this evening?
I have
Joe?
one. Yes, I have one. Mr. Mayor and Council, we had a presentation a month ago, and we had asked for a meeting or to form a committee for a sit-down with us. We have no response. Can we expect one?
Some kind of response,
There was
should
a
be
letter.
getting a response.
There was a letter sent out yesterday or 2 days ago.
You should be getting it in the mail.
Yeah, that, okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Joe. Communications.
Number 3.
3, yes, high school anniversary. Yes, $500 each.
Yeah.
We haven't received any names yet, or whatever, or is that up to us to?
No, first thing to know,
You
what
gotta-
they're going
you
to
gotta
do
say
the
yes,
award.
we're gonna do
Okay,
it.
yes. Everybody in favor of anniversaries again this year?
Yep.
Okay. Very good. Nothing else under communications?
What about number 12? Support for peaceful conclusion to ongoing rail disruptions and encouragement for ongoing discussions. Is that something that,
Where is this,
number 12?
township?
You know, that's where it was down southern Ontario, that's. the-
Tied
started.
or whatever?
Yeah.
Tied in that game.
Yeah. Tied in that.
I mean, that was a big thing this year, the rail disruptions. I think it does have and I think they did have an effect on, Canada's GDP
Oh, yeah, they did.
overall, so, I mean,
So you'd like to support that resolution?
I would, yeah.
Everybody else fine with that?
Yeah, sure.
Okay. Send out our support then, Nathan? Okay, then, Schreiber Cemetery Committee Terms of Reference.
I'm on the cemetery committee, so.
Are you okay with this?
No, I'm, actually,
I don't see
I don't
something
think-
highlighted.
So
actually my highlighter doesn't work.
So if they
I don't know if
Sense.
if a committee, like, I don't know if it's consistent with every committee, but if there's not 7 members, is there still a committee, or is it just like it's a maximum of 7?
That's a maximum.
Okay. Cause it just says it shall consist of 7 members.
Yeah.
I would, yeah, that's what I had highlighted, I would say that's a high number for the cemetery.
Or is there
But it's just,
supposed
if
to
it's a
be-
max, it doesn't matter.
Is there
It's-
supposed
it's
to, should there be a minimum number?
That's also a question, if it's gonna be a counselor, 1 member of the community and a staff member, do we need a committee? Right?
So yeah, it comes down to that. You know, it's with regards to most of these terms of reference, it's essentially the same one that I've been using as a template. The only different parts just at the mandate and everything at the beginning. And we generally just, you know, put in a number 7. That can always be changed depending on the committee, but you know, again, it reaches a point where you have more than 7 people, it becomes more like a conference.
Okay, no, I understand that, I just,
I think just from my experience on some of the committees, you pick up members as you go along.
Yep.
You might start with 1
you
and then,
know, I was gonna say,
People come
honestly,
and
the less
go, yep.
is often better.
Yeah,
It's
that's,
like a fine line,
I
there's
was
too many and too little.
I was probably thinking of changing it to 4, but like,
Guess we don't know what to do. Put this out and see.
it's a
what-
max.
Yeah.
In terms of, again, minimum and all that, that's only again relevant for, again, certain committees, and the reason being is if we get 1 or 2 people, right, it becomes really difficult to then, you know, justify staff to come overtime to, you know, participate, take minutes and all, because it is administrative time, right, that's
It is.
needed to take minutes and everything for these meetings, so that's just, that's typically why we like to see at least, you know, 3 members of the public and all, but, you know, if it's a committee that's not meeting too often, then the case is, you know, you're saying 4 people, whatever like that, in the case where it's not meeting too often, then that should be fine.
Well, it does say 4 meetings a year,
Yeah.
It's not very often.
you know.
Is everybody fine with those terms of reference then?
Yeah, stay consistent.
Okay, now into other business. Bylaw 15-2020, the Fednor Amendment.
This again was just an amendment to change the end date for our CNO agreement. That's what covers our funding for economic development position.
Did another CNO grant go in?
It's gonna be very difficult in order for us to get that funding again. It's, you have to really prove like economic hardship.
We can't do that?
That's a good thing.
Yeah, it's a good thing.
Okay.
Well, considering everything that's going on, we might not wanna push our luck, or is that the wrong way of looking at it, you know?
You're right. Okay, Senior of the Year Award, I guess we should consider
Yeah, just to consider for the next meeting,
for the next
some
meeting.
names. Last year we missed it.
Yes, so that'll be, and we present that at the seniors supper in June, do we?
Yes,
you have a list somewhere where we can see who's been chosen?
it's attached to your agenda.
Oh, is it on there?
Yeah.
Okay, good. I didn't see that.
So yeah, for the next meeting, if we could have some names to come forward.
There's a name last year.
Yes, but we did not do the Ontario one.
Oh, I
We
see,
did
I
a
see, I
municipal
see.
one.
Gotcha.
We missed the provincial one last year.
Okay?
Yep.
Alrighty, and last.
I see it.
Council meeting schedule.
I didn't look far enough down.
You got me.
Doug.
You got me.
Council meeting schedule for April? Is there something,
The second meeting of the month is April the 28th, and that will be a travel day for those people attending NOMA
right?
in Fort Francis.
Right.
Um,
When was the first one going to be there on
The first one will be the
14th.
the 14th.
first one?
of the month of April.
Yeah.
Second and fourth Tuesday, right?
Well, from where I'm looking, that looks like the third.
Well, it starts on a Wednesday.
Can we go on that?
Okay,
Can we
sorry,
just do
sorry,
Monday?
sorry, yeah.
Yeah, the
Do the
27th.
Monday,
So we were thinking probably the Monday.
27th.
I'm okay with that.
I'm okay with that. Everybody okay with the 27th instead of the 28th, the Monday instead of Tuesday?
Okay.
I have a headache driving all the way to work.
Give you a
Let
little time
Doug
to
drive.
reflect.
That's a better way of looking at
You
it.
can snore in the back.
Okay, so everybody's okay with the 27th
Yeah, that's fine.
Alrighty, well, that brings to a close our council meeting for this evening. So resolution number 86-20, moved by Councillor Mullen, seconded by Councillor McGrath. The meeting now adjourned at 8:10 PM. All in favor? Thank you. Good night, everyone, and thank you for joining us.